The film starts off in Paris in 1911. Former prefect Raymond is watching and enjoying a cabaret performance by a showgirl named Nicole. At the same time, Ferdinand is heading home after playing some cards. As Ferdinand takes a moment by a statue, suddenly, strange golden lights appear above him, catching him off guard. This curious phenomenon is the work of Professor Joseph, an expert on ancient Egypt, who, through extensive research, has developed telepathic techniques. From the comfort of his home, he manages to hatch a 136-million-year-old dinosaur egg at the museum, unleashing a pterosaur into the world. A remarkable twist occurs when a psychic connection forms between Joseph and the pterosaur. Initially, every movement of the creature mirrors that of Joseph's. Then, with a flap of its wings, the pterosaur breaks free from the museum, soaring into the Parisian night sky. This extraordinary sight could be witnessed by Inspector Albert if he didn't succumb to sleep. Then Raymond invites Nicole to join him in his car for some quality time together. Suddenly, their peaceful moment is shattered by an attack from the pterosaur, causing the car to plunge into the river. Witnessing the chaos unfold is Ferdinand, while Albert is roused from slumber to handle the emergency. Meanwhile, Andrzej, a young scientist working as an assistant at the Jardin des Plantes, finds himself attempting to compose another letter to his crush, the renowned writer and journalist Adele, who he encountered during a book signing. Despite Adele's absence from Paris, her publisher dispatching her to Peru, her adventurous spirit leads her to Egypt instead. There, she enlists the help of local men to search for the tomb of Rameses the Great, unaware that one among them intends to betray her. As they step into the tomb, they gather fragments of an ancient parchment, which Adele starts deciphering, eventually uncovering a concealed door. Upon opening it, black oil oozes out, exposing it as a lethal trap. When the men turn on Adele, consumed by greed for the treasure, she stays composed, fully aware of the peril. In a matter of moments, one of the men meets a fiery end. Acknowledging Adele's expertise, the group seeks her guidance as they navigate through further puzzles. Eventually, they discover the chamber containing the mummy and the coveted treasure. Yet, Adele's quest is not for gold, but for the personal physician of Rameses. With her deft touch, she unlocks the sarcophagus, while justice is dealt to the two traitorous men. One man is choked by the necklaces he wears, while another tumbles through a sudden hole in the ground. Adele's examination of the mummy is abruptly interrupted by her archenemy, Professor Dieulafolt. Armed with information from his spy, Dieulafolt arrives with a contingent of soldiers to apprehend her. Puzzled by her interest in an ancient mummy, Adele reveals her sister's illness and her belief that only this ancient doctor can cure her. To revive him, she plans to utilize the published research of Joseph. With contempt, Dieulafolt laughs off the idea, calling it silly. He takes Joseph's book and tells the soldiers to take Adele back to the first room for execution, and justifies this action by stating that it is the appropriate punishment for foreigners like her. As Adele faces her end, she calmly asks for a cigarette. Acting quickly, she grabs the lighter from Dieulafolt and hits him in the groin. In a brave move, Adele pushes Dieulafolt into the machine and runs into the tunnel. She drops the lighter, starting a fire that stops the soldiers. Determined, she heads to the mummy chamber, jumps into the sarcophagus, and pushes it through the ground into a river below, escaping safely. Now drifting on the river, she paddles her way back to the city, leaving behind a furious Dieulafolt swearing revenge. Meanwhile, in Paris, Ferdinand finds himself being questioned by the police. However, his claims of seeing a dinosaur and suspecting the former prefect of having an affair with a showgirl are met with skepticism. As more information comes to light and the bodies of Nicole and Raymond are identified, Albert dismisses Ferdinand. He instructs his officers to keep the scandal quiet. Despite Albert's efforts, the news spreads rapidly, dominating the headlines of every newspaper in the city the next morning. Even the president hears about the chaos and quickly orders his cabinet to contain the situation and prevent public panic. He chooses to pretend he doesn't know about the pterosaur sighting outside his window, striving to maintain order amid the brewing storm. He demands that results be delivered by the end of the week, but the task gets passed around among politicians until it finally reaches Albert with only a 24-hour deadline. Meanwhile, Andrzej visits his friend Professor Menard at the museum and discovers the shattered egg, concluding that it hatched from within. Albert's arrival at the scene doesn't provide much insight. His lack of intelligence slows down progress. To divert his attention, Menard directs him to Joseph, an expert on the era of the pterosaur. Surprisingly, Joseph has managed to befriend the creature with raw meat and hides it in his apartment. When Albert and the police arrive, the dinosaur remains hidden behind a curtain as Joseph shares his knowledge. Albert's petty act of stealing Joseph's breakfast, which includes a hard-boiled egg, angers the pterosaur, causing it to wreak havoc in the apartment before flying away. As a result, Joseph ends up behind bars. Meanwhile, Adele arrives in Paris with the mummy, deceiving her editor about her travels to Peru and presenting the box as containing a large pipe. Upon returning home, she promptly dismisses the nurse caring for her sister and ignores Andre's letters, saving them to read during her baths. After checking on her comatose sister Agathe, who lies in bed with a hat-pin through her head, Adele promises to heal her soon. However, with the loss of the book, she must find Joseph to perform the ritual himself. As she leaves, she bumps into Andre, who hands her yet another letter. Adding it to the growing pile on the table, Adele finally notices the newspaper headline announcing Joseph's impending execution by guillotine. Andre reveals the prison where Joseph is held, prompting Adele to rush there disguised as his lawyer. Joseph, occupied with controlling the dinosaur to prevent further bloodshed, confesses he cannot use his telepathic abilities to escape. Adele must devise an alternative plan to secure his freedom. Unfortunately, their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of the real lawyer, leading to Adele's expulsion from the premises. Determined to reach Joseph, she tries various disguises. At first, she poses as the cook, but her attempt fails when the real cook's badge is discovered in Joseph's plate. Subsequent efforts as a nun and a nurse also end in exposure. It's not until Adele adopts the guise of a guard that she successfully gains access to Joseph's cell. However, her efforts prove fruitless as she arrives too late. Joseph has already been transferred in preparation for his execution. Meanwhile, Albert warmly welcomes Justin, a renowned big game hunter tasked with tracking down the pterosaur. Their strategy involves observing the creature's behavior, leading them to the Eiffel Tower. However, their efforts result in an unexpected outcome. They are showered with the dinosaur's droppings. Justin identifies the excrement as mutton-based, indicating their next destination. Every location in the city where sheep are present, from farms to the Jardin des Plantes. The next morning, Adele visits the president, who remembers her from a previous interview. She appeals to his stance against the death penalty, urging him to pardon Joseph. The president responds vaguely, promising to consider her request. Their discussion is abruptly interrupted by the descending pterosaur. Acting swiftly, Adele tackles the president to safety, but the creature takes the opportunity to snatch a nearby dog instead. Interpreting Adele's actions as an assault on the president, the guards promptly remove her from the premises. Meanwhile, at the Jardin des Plantes, Albert and Justin disguise themselves as sheep, patiently waiting for the pterosaur to appear. The one who makes the crucial discovery is Andre, who conducts research and presents Menard with his findings. Placing fragments of the eggshell and a generous portion of meat in a secluded spot, Andre lures the pterosaur, accompanied by the unwitting dog, mistaking it for its nest. Meanwhile, Adele tries to convince the police of Joseph's unique ability to control the pterosaur, but her pleas are ignored, leading to her expulsion. Returning home, Adele seeks solace in a bath and finally reads Andre's letters, finding the solution she desperately sought. Overwhelmed with gratitude for Andre's brilliance, she rushes to him and expresses her thanks with a kiss before persuading him to lead her to the dinosaur's nest. There, Adele befriends the pterosaur through song and gifts, earning its trust enough to mount it and tame it into providing her with transportation. Flying Adele to the nearby prison, the pterosaur deftly rescues Joseph from the guillotine, causing the executioner to meet an unexpected fate. As they soar back to the nest, they are spotted by Justin, who pursues them while Albert remains oblivious in slumber. Joseph is joyously reunited with his old friend Menard, but their reunion is cut short by Justin's intervention. His gunshot wounds the pterosaur and inadvertently injures Joseph due to their psychic bond. Enraged, Menard snatches the hunter's weapon and gives chase through the park, incensed at the interference with scientific pursuits. With time running short and Joseph's life tethered to the pterosaur's survival, Adele entrusts Andre with the task of keeping the creature alive while she transports Joseph to her apartment to perform the ritual to resurrect the mummy. Utilizing Adele's antique collection to construct a summoning circle, Joseph channels the last remnants of his telepathic abilities to revive the mummy. However, the strain proves fatal for both him and the pterosaur. As the ritual takes effect, the mummy, known as Patmosis, awakens, expressing gratitude for his resurrection. However, he delivers somber news. He is a physicist, not a physician, rendering him unable to aid Agatha. Despite this revelation, Patmosis expresses curiosity about Agatha's condition, prompting Adele to recount the events leading to her sister's injury. Agatha and Adele's competitive nature ignited an intense tennis match, fueled by pent-up emotions. However, this rivalry tragically escalated into a devastating outcome. As Adele forcefully strikes the ball, it rebounds off Agatha's racket, causing her to trip over a hatpin, which pierces her head. Patmos regrets his inability to help and expresses a desire to have encountered Joseph, whose rumored abilities supposedly included reviving the dead within a 2-kilometer radius. Recalling a newspaper advertisement for a mummy exhibition at the Louvre, Adele devises a plan. She puts Agath in a wheelchair and dresses Patmos in a suit, enabling him to scare Ferdinand as they head to the museum. With Patmos' help in unlocking the doors and putting the guards to sleep, they manage to enter. Within the exhibition, they undertake a mission to open every sarcophagus in search of Remus's physician, liberating the servant mummies along the way. Eventually, they free Pharaoh Remus himself, who, in gratitude for his revival, agrees to assist Agath. The pharaoh's personal physician delicately removes the hat-pin and prepares a salve using Remus's entrails to cover the wound. In a gesture steeped in tradition, Remus bestows a kiss upon Agath, not out of necessity but as a customary act. With the ritual complete, Remus embarks on a city tour with his entourage of servants as Agathe awakens from her slumber. As the sisters finally reunite, Remus suggests an unconventional addition to the Louvre, a pyramid. The unexpected encounter with the mummies overwhelms Ferdinand, who faints once more, drawing the attention of the newspapers the following morning. Meanwhile, the president summons Albert to address the newfound threat, while Andre attempts to visit Adele but encounters Agathe instead. Recognizing Adele's absence for several weeks, Andre presents Agath with flowers, leading to an impromptu tea gathering between them. Meanwhile, Adele sets sail for a much-needed holiday, blissfully unaware of the clandestine pursuit by Dewulvolt's men. The destination holds promise until the chilling truth dawns. The ship they're aboard is none other than the Titanic. In the eerie silence of the Jardin des Plantes, Vinard's relentless pursuit of Justin comes to an abrupt halt as Albert and his officers detain him. The film ends when Justin's fleeting relief is shattered as the piercing gaze of a pair of gorillas falls upon him, foreshadowing an ominous and uncertain fate.